Hey, everybody. Welcome to Right in Front of My Face, the podcast that talks about big things happening right in front of us. I am your host, Shannon Hull, and I am in my dark basement right now recording this intro, not believing that this is episode 7. I would like to say a huge thank you to all of you who have taken the time to download and listen to this podcast. There are millions of podcasts out there, and it means so much to me that you are choosing this one. I am so happy that the stories are resonating, that they're interesting, and the support is really driving me to work harder. So thank you so much to everybody around the world who is listening. I am delighted about today's interview. It might be a little bit out there for some of you, but I'm okay with that because I think we can expand our minds together. I would like to introduce Marjorie. I've known Marjorie for a number of years. She is a working psychic medium in the city of Seattle. She does readings both in her home and at a farmer's market where she resides every Sunday morning. She also sees people over the phone, and you'll learn how I meet her in the interview, but I have seen Marjorie on a number of occasions. She knows things that other people do not know, and my experience with her has been real, true, and incredibly accurate. Marjorie is not going to give me a reading today. That's not what this interview is about. I wanted to sit down with Marjorie to hear about her life experience. I was so interested to know what growing up with this talent was like, because it's an intangible talent. It's not like being good at sports or being a savant musician. The talent that she has is completely intangible and reliant on whether or not people believe her. And I was intrigued to know what that experience was like. Marjorie was incredibly generous in sharing her life story. She talks a little bit about the JFK assassination. We talk about the afterlife. It gets real existential, so buckle your seatbelt. Please approach this with an open mind, as with everything, and please enjoy this incredible story. Okay, so we can, your kitty is settled in right here. I love
know,
this.
That's amazing.
He's so cute.
Cute-o. Yeah.
So this is my first time taking my podcast remote. This is very exciting for me. So thank you, Marjorie, for opening your beautiful new space. It's so light and bright in here. It's wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. It's light and bright even in the rain.
It is. Yeah. And it is really, really raining today. So thank you for opening your space. And I would like to introduce Marjorie. I've known Marjorie now, let's see, my son is 8.5. So I have known Marjorie for 6 years now. And do you mind if I tell everybody how I met you?
Of course.
So I met Marjorie at the Ballard Farmers Market, and I was at kind of a mission critical decision-making point in my life about whether or not we were going to move or whether or not we were going to build a house. And we were in the midst of like a pretty big decision-making process for our family. And we were taking a Sunday around the Ballard Farmers Market, and I rounded a corner and I saw Marjorie sitting in a chair. You just sit in a simple little chair with a simple sign out that says psychic readings. Mm-hmm. And I felt a gravitational pull towards you. And I looked at my husband and I said, "Give me $20. I will meet you at the Ballard Loft for lunch in 20 minutes. And I sat down with you, and what came out of that reading for me was significant. It was still, I remember it as clear as a bell. You were able to communicate with my grandfather very clearly, and you knew some things that literally no one in this world had known about except you. So I had a very powerful first experience with you, then have subsequently come back for a few readings, and the guidance that you have provided me truly is the reason that this podcast is happening.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah,
That's
you
wonderful.
were the first person to really say, I think that you need to do this. And I think you need to get into a writing class. I think you need to be creative. And I will be forever grateful for that. So I am honored that you said yes to come on, because I have so many questions for you about not only what it's like to live with this ability, but what it felt like to grow up not knowing what it was, not knowing. So I'm kind of interested in your coming to be story And I do want people to understand what we just talked about. So I had asked Marjorie if often when people find out she's a psychic and a medium, if they kind of want proof right away. And what was your answer, Marjorie?
Well, I only do readings in a very specific setting and time, and I I kind of open my channel, so to speak. And then when I'm done, the best part is I get to close those channels and have a quote unquote normal existence. I can learn to tune out random information,
right?
Unless I'm doing a reading, and then I'm all there. So if someone comes up to me and just says, oh, say something psychic or do something psychic, I just tell them, sorry, that's for when I'm doing readings. And sometimes people are just being silly, like, okay, what's the weather going to be, or who's going to win the Super Bowl, or that kind of thing. But sometimes they want something more specific. And I don't feel any need at this point to prove myself.
Right.
I know my abilities are real. And if people want to have a reading, they can have a reading, and if not, that's fine.
Right.
So
I think that's an important distinction to make, is that today is not going to be a reading.
Correct.
Today is going to be an interview to find out more about you, because you are a person who is right in front of my face. You were right in front of my face 6 years ago and presented me with very real information about my life that has been tremendously helpful. So that is my introduction. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Marjorie, let's start. This is what I like to do, is really start from the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, a place that never agreed with me.
Oh, really?
Even as a child. I left at 13 to go to San Francisco, and that was fabulous. But I always felt very hemmed in, as if I didn't belong there. It was very narrow somehow in the way people thought and acted. And so I was very glad to leave there as a child.
As a child, so you leave when you're 15. But
13.
13.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of hear about your growing up in Rhode Island, because I'm so curious about how that was for you. And at what point did you kind of start feeling this talent, this gift, whatever you wanted to call it at the time? Like, how does that manifest in a child?
I had this ability for as long as I could remember. And it's difficult to describe. It made me different from the rest of my family, who some may or may have not have had some of this ability, but they certainly didn't discuss it or talk about it.
Right.
But it was so strong that I had to do certain things with it. Like I would take a deck of cards, and I'd have one of my brothers pick up the cards, not show me what it is, and I could guess what it was. And we do little things like that, so they say, oh, she's a little different.
It was a little party trick.
Almost like a game, but I felt I had to do it. I just felt compelled to do it to test myself in a way. And then I remember very distinctly one day when I was about 5 or 6, I would know what the card was before they picked it up. I didn't like that. And
so where are you in your birth order?
I am the 4th of 5.
Okay.
So I have 2 sisters who are a lot older than me. And by the time I was a toddler, they were basically out of the house. And so then I have a brother a couple of years older than me and a brother a couple of years younger than me. So I more or less grew up with my brothers.
And so is your family like pretty normal at this point? I mean,
No,
are they like conventional?
no.
What's your family like?
My family life was very chaotic, mainly because my mother was really mentally ill, I think. She was very violent, very abusive. And there'd be horrible fights between her and my father continually. So it was a very chaotic kind of upbringing. It wasn't by any means Leave It to Beaver or anything like that. And so the reason I went to San Francisco when I was 13 is the family split up at that point.
Okay.
So my brothers and I and my mother went to San Francisco. And my father stayed back east.
Okay, so until you're 13, this is just kind of a party trick to you.
No, because actually one of my first memories as a tiny child, toddler, I guess, is I had the same dream again and again and again and again of dying in the Holocaust.
Whoa.
That was a past life memory.
And you knew what the Holocaust was as a young
Because
child?
I was living it. And my family is Jewish, and my father was an immigrant as a child from Russia,
Okay.
and my mother was one of the first born in America in her family.
So do you tell anyone about this dream that you're having?
No. Not till I was an adult. But I knew my name. I remember once playing in the backyard with my younger brother when I was about 8 or 9. And I said to my brother, Glenn, you don't know this, but my real name is Rebecca.
Wow.
And I didn't say anything else, and he didn't know what I was talking about.
Like, okay.
Okay, yeah. So I had this burden, shadow, whatever you might call it, on me.
Yeah, I mean, that is a heavy thing for a little kid to carry.
But I realized later that it was very interesting because, as I said, my home life was very chaotic and not a lot of fun. But I was always detached from it in a way. I was never afraid of my mother, even in her most violent times. Mm-hmm. I could feel both my parents. There was something wrong there, but that wasn't my problem. They had issues. It wasn't because of me or I was being bad or something like that. So I had a very adult way of looking at it, a very detached way. And later in life, I thought that life was awful, but it's nothing compared to the Holocaust. This is a breeze. Seriously. I felt, and later in life, when I was in a difficult situation, I'd tell myself, okay, I'm not in a concentration camp and I'm not on the Titanic. So I can deal with it.
Was that another experience?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No. But I mean, it's the kind of situation where it's a horrible catastrophe going on. So most of our day-to-day situations are not that extreme.
I think that might be my new mantra.
It's a reality check.
Yes, totally.
That way.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, at least I'm not in a concentration camp or on the Titanic.
But remember I told you when I knew what a card was before my brother picked it, I started to have a lot of precognition. And it'd be about little things sometimes. But when I was a kid, I did foresee President Kennedy's assassination. That was hideous because I knew it was going to happen and I knew there was zero I could do about it.
Do you know who did it?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea what was going to happen, where. I didn't know in Dallas.
And how old were you at that point?
I was about 13 or 14 or so. But what happened was I had come home from school and we got the afternoon newspaper every day. Yeah. So I just opened the newspaper, the front page, to look at it. And I'll never forget, it's like a kind of a fog came over the front page. I couldn't read it. And I just kept staring at it, saying, what's going on here? And the fog kind of cleared, and it said in huge black letters, President Kennedy assassinated. And this was about 2 weeks before.
So you saw the newspaper headline say that?
Yes. It was awful. And I absolutely knew without a single doubt it was going to happen.
Wow.
But what could I do,
Yeah, you're 13.
And I couldn't call the police and say he's going to be assassinated tomorrow at this corner or something. I had no information about.
Wow.
Even if I had, who was going to listen? But I didn't know.
That's an incredibly powerless feeling too, though.
It was awful. It was awful. And that's one reason why in my teen years, I really tried to suppress the whole thing, forget the whole thing.
Yeah, I bet.
I just wanted to have nothing to do with it, just go on with my life.
So again, I'm assuming you didn't tell anybody that you saw this headline because,
no.
I mean, how do you say that?
Later on I did, and they could necessarily not believe me and say, oh yeah, you're just saying that now because it happened,
Right.
But because later in life I would tell people if I foresaw something. But then I didn't know what to do with it. And I was just a kid and it was so big. It was so horrible.
So do you believe that this is a real thing, or is there any part of you that's like, this cannot be what I think it is?
Well, I was trying to tell myself this can't be true, but I knew 100% it was true. There was no doubt. So I couldn't think, oh, it's my imagination. Why would I even imagine that? It makes no sense.
No, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I absolutely knew.
So how did you feel when you got the news that it had 2 weeks later?
It was hideous. And I felt a degree of guilt too,
Sure.
but I knew I couldn't have changed it. Had I told my parents or called the police or something, nothing would have happened. So I thought, what's the use of having precognition if you can't fix something or change something or prevent it from happening? So that's one reason it turned me off to my psychic abilities, because, you know, just foreseeing dark things happening, what good is that? I don't want to be a Cassandra.
And so are you seeing that? Are you seeing that play out in your everyday life, like with your friends, with your family? Are you like starting to receive messages and about everybody, or is it just?
Well, at that point, I would receive a lot of random messages. It wasn't always something very portentous or anything, but I could pick up. I'm very empathic, so I could pick up people's feelings or what's going on with them, and I didn't want to know. It's none of my business.
Yeah.
I have my own things going on. Why should I go into a room or something and just pick up all kinds of random information? And that's an invasion of people's privacy too, I think. It's none of my business.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
So that's why if someone comes to a reading, nowadays I tune into them. They want me to.
Right.
You know, but
it's
if
consensual.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel very, I don't like it if it's not consensual. I don't want to know. But now I can control it. Now that doesn't happen, but it used to. So this is another reason why in my teen years, especially, I didn't want to deal with psychic ability anymore. It's like, go away, don't bother me.
Yeah.
You know? So I was trying to suppress it for years.
So what happens to you when you suppress this?
Nothing horrible, but things just feel a little off kilter.
So you're sitting on this intuition and this ability to perceive events happening. How does spirit play into this for you as well? Because I've talked to some other people who have the ability to talk to spirit, and they were freaked out.
As far as being
when
a medium,
they were little kids. Yes, as far as being a medium.
Well, I was lucky because as far as being a medium, I was not a medium as a child.
Okay.
At all. I was psychic.
Okay.
The mediumship ability is something I never thought would happen. I was not trying to make it happen. It just, when I started doing readings years later, it just suddenly popped up.
Huh. Okay, well, we'll come back to that because I want to keep going through your path here. So you're 15, 16, 17, suppressing it. Mm-hmm. When can you not suppress it anymore? Like, when do you acknowledge this in your person?
The major thing that happened was when I was 23, I went to live in Japan.
Okay.
And it really started when I started studying martial arts, Aikido. And that's, of course, a use of this channel of this kind of natural energy. That's the center of all Asian martial arts and medicine and so on, acupuncture and so forth. And I think dealing with this energy all the time. And also one of my young instructors and I had this very strange psychic connection. It was very interesting. But anyway, my abilities started running amok.
What does that mean?
Things like metal bending, objects disappearing. You know, it was.
Wait, so this is going into like telekinesis territory.
Yes. This is something that never happened before.
So tell me everything about this.
It's hard to describe, but at the time, like, I don't know if you remember Uri Geller. He was a Israeli psychic. He was a very big deal
now
at the
that you
time.
say that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
And he would bend spoons and keys and that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, so I tried to do it and it started happening and things would be teleporting from one place to the other. And I didn't have much control over it. It was just like going bonkers.
Now, see, again, I'm reverting to the place of like, I want to see that. Like, did you ever have witnesses?
Oh, yes. Because I had witnesses with friends and so on.
Right.
But I ended up working with scientists because I have to get some guidance and validation.
Right.
So I worked with some scientists when I was visiting America. And then I ended up working with a different scientific group in Tokyo. There's a place called the International Association of Religion and Parapsychology, which was studying spiritual energy by scientific means. And so, there was so much proof. And this went on for years. They were studying my abilities and so on.
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea about this. This is very exciting information.
And it was nice to see, it was nice to work with scientists in one way because you could get actual proof. On the other hand, every scientist I work with had their own pet theory. And they're all sort of out to prove their own pet theory. I thought you shouldn't have any theories. You should just test and then draw the logical conclusion scientifically. So I was more scientific in the approach than some of them, I think.
Got to get that ego out of the way.
Yeah. But I enjoy doing it for the most part.
So you're 23?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have like electrodes hooked up to you?
Oh, yes.
Are you learning about yourself also at this point? Or are you like, this is not where I want to be?
Oh, no. I was interested in it because this is something that I've been manifesting all my life in one form or another.
Yeah.
And so they can study it. They can validate it. They can see, for example, they learned my energy when I would send it out. They'd ask me, turn it on, turn it off. And they found out my energy had a large effect on surrounding magnetic fields, gravitational fields. And I could create light in a blacked out room when I sent the energy. So all of that was very interesting. But after some years, I thought, well, okay, fine. I don't have to keep reproving it,
Right.
So what
This
am I
is a
going to
real
do with
thing.
it now? So I got into healing for quite a few years. And they were studying my abilities at a big university hospital in Tokyo. And that was very interesting. And then eventually I moved to doing readings.
Okay.
So it's always been kind of evolving. And then originally when I did readings, there was no mediumship involved at all.
Okay.
But after a few years, suddenly that happened one time in a reading, much to my surprise. So
that would be
it was
surprising.
like opening another door. But I feel it when I do a reading, my job is simply to pass on the information that I receive. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is, I don't judge it, or I'm never afraid of it, or anything like that. It's just, okay, here's what I'm receiving.
So you start doing readings, and is this how you start making your living? Like you're fully accepting of this gift. It's been studied. You're not trying to prove it to anybody. You're like, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, eventually I decided I had a long struggle deciding that I could accept payment for it. Because I thought when I did healing, I did so much healing in Japan, I never accepted any money. I was working as an English teacher at the time. But eventually, when I wanted to do readings, I knew, because readings take so much energy out of me. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't work in the day, do readings in the evening, because I never do it later in the day at all. So I thought, if I do this, I'm going to have to charge for it. And I just put myself through agonies thinking, do I have the right to do that? Because I feel like the energy is just coming through me and I'm helping other people with it. But then I realized, well, it's a service like anything else.
So you are sort of transmitting messages to everyone else. Do you have anything guiding you at this point about what your path should be? How do you interpret that for yourself?
Well, I've had some incredible experiences, which is probably too complicated to talk about now, where I have been guided with such a incredible focus that it changed my life and it took my life in various directions. That's different from the information I get during a reading.
Okay.
It's from a different place or a different source. But I'll tell you just one very quick story.
Yes, please.
Because you're admiring my new place here.
Yeah.
And what happened is I had to keep moving because landlords kept selling the places I'd be living to developers. And so I had to look for another place. And my angel of a nephew, Michael, said, okay, I'm tired of having you keep moving. I'll buy a condo and you can live there. So that was amazing. So I set about looking, and I looked and looked and looked and couldn't find the right place. And then last winter, when we had the huge snowstorm in February, I went to the store. I went up to Market Street, and then I heard a very distinct voice in my head say, walk home on the other side of the street. Just like that. And it made no sense to me. And I almost didn't do it because and I thought, well, what the heck? This is so clear. So I walked to the other side of the street, started walking home. No one around. It was a blizzard. And I finally ran into this woman walking her dog. And I said, hi. And she said, aren't you Marjorie, the psychic? So I said, yes. I realized she must be a client. So we were chit-chatting for a few minutes. And then she asked what's new. And I said, I'm looking for a place to buy around here. And she said, oh, I think there's a place available in my building because they're renovating. So we walked here and she showed me the building. I wrote down the address and the number. And then it's a long story, but it was hard to get in touch with the owners. Mm-hmm. But eventually I get a call saying, well, we just finished renovating. The place is not on the market. Do you want to come see it tomorrow? So I came, and the minute the front door was open, I knew this was the place.
Yeah,
before I even
it's beautiful.
It has the greatest energy. I just love it for so many reasons. But I just knew, and I saw it on a Thursday. My nephew put an offer on Friday. They said yes Saturday. But had I not listened to Walk Home on the other side of the street, that never would have happened.
I feel like that's such a great metaphor for everybody, really. I mean, psychic or not, listening to that little voice is really important.
Yeah. Well, this is a big voice.
Yeah.
It wasn't a little voice.
Yeah.
It's very different from a feeling or a notion. This was
like somebody telling you what to do.
It was someone telling me what to do. Absolutely.
Well, and it wasn't me.
It wasn't me either.
That is how my grandfather came through you. I don't know if you remember it or not.
I don't remember.
But my husband and I were in the midst of trying to figure out if we wanted to build a house, and we'd met with an architect. And I am one of a lot of grandchildren, but the only one that plays the piano. And my grandfather, when he passed, had left his little Steinway baby grand to my mother. And so I was going to receive the piano, but we had no room for it. It had been in storage in Spokane. And let's see, that Friday night before I saw you on Sunday, we had met with our architect trying to figure out where this piano could potentially go in this new house. And we spent quite a lot of time talking about it. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that you told me was you actually stopped the reading after a minute. And you said, I have this man coming through telling me about this piano. Does this mean anything to you? And I would just stop dead in my tracks. And I said, yes, that is significant to me. And you said, well, it is very important to him that you have this piano for whatever reason. And then you went on to describe my grandfather and but it was a detail that was very big in that moment and very real. And so it was a very loud voice that came through very powerfully as my grandfather.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it gives you the reassurance this is really your grandfather. This isn't just someone coming through saying, someone's sending love to you or something. So,
it was a detail that could not have been plucked out of the ether. No, it was very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy very much, most 95% of the time, I enjoy connecting with people who passed away. And their energy and personality.
Have you had any negative experiences?
Yes. A couple of times. They're very rare because most people are nice or at least halfway decent. But for example, one time I was doing a phone reading for a woman in Ohio, I think it was, and she just wanted to know about career and this and that. And I started getting, because it was a phone reading and I closed my eyes the whole time I'm doing a phone reading, and I saw the number 6 in front of me. And I knew something happened to her very bad at the age of 6. So I said to her, did something really awful happen to you at the age of 6? And she didn't say anything. She didn't answer. And then her grandfather came through from the other side. He was a piece of work. He was an alcoholic who had molested her starting at age of 6. And I felt his personality, if you can call it that. It was disgusting, because sometimes you can do awful things when you're alive, but when you cross over, you gain some wisdom or something. He had not at all. He remained intact in all his awfulness. And I told her what I was getting, and this is your grandfather, and she she didn't say anything for a long time. And she said, I never told anyone in my whole life about this. And I said, I think that's the real reason you called in a way.
Yeah.
So you can get it out in the open. And when I made her, while we were on the phone, look up, what do you call it, like support groups for children who had been molested. And I made her promise to call because she needed help with that. But I'll never forget connecting with him because he was just terrible. So not everyone is redeemable. Most are. That
is really a powerful thing also. I mean, and I want to come back to your 20s where you are now, like, you've decided to accept payment.
No, that wasn't until years later.
Oh, that wasn't until years later.
Yeah, that was like in my 40s or something like that.
Okay, so what happens in that span where you've gotten studied now? You work as a healer.
Right. And then, but eventually I decided I wanted to use these abilities full time.
Okay.
And doing readings seemed the obvious way, plus healings from time to time too. And so then I decided if I do that, I need to make a living at it.
Yeah.
I'm not an heiress.
No.
Far from it. So,
no, but I mean, you know, I look around and I'm hearing the talents that you're talking about, and I know them to be real. Have you been tempted to do other things with it? Have you been tempted to?
Well, the other things I do with it is my writing.
Right.
And I write a fantasy adventure series called The Boy with Golden Eyes. And now I'm writing a spin-off of that called The Lyric Chronicles.
That's done quite well.
Yeah, there's been movie interest that never quite worked out at the end, that kind of thing. But I love doing it. It started out as a gift for my great-nephew, Sam, who he and I were very close. And when he was a child, it was a way of keeping our connection going and sharing things with him. He influenced the main character, Rupert. But the more my own experiences and my own history and my own viewpoint and truth emerge into the book, and you see it. So you can read it as a fun fantasy adventure, but I think you can read it as a really profound spiritual journey. Because that's, to me, that's what it's really about. And I never plan out anything. I just sit down to write and it comes out.
And it just comes through you.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen next. So that makes it a lot of fun to write about.
Because in my experience, writing is really hard. I think most writers would really love to be able to sit down and just have it flow through them like that.
It's interesting because I've gotten feedback from fans saying, oh, it's such intricate plotting. You must have figured the whole thing out. No, I don't know. Haven't figured out anything in advance, but it all fits together. But some friends who know about my story and a lot of things that have happened have suggested I write my memoirs, but I have no interest in writing my memoirs. But I write about the most amazing things that happened to me in the books in slightly fantasy form.
Yeah.
But almost everything that happens in the story that's psychic or spiritual has happened to me.
Well, so that sounds, I mean, that's a therapeutic outlet for you also, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because I did some writing as a kid or a teenager. But years later, I thought, I'm just done with writing. Yeah, I did that. Been there, done that. It was fun, but it's not going to happen again. But when I started to write The Boy with Golden, it just happened accidentally. Because when my nephew Sam was young, they lived in Seattle in the summer and Manhattan the rest of the year. So one summer we were saying goodbye, and Sam was about 7 at the time, and he was upset saying goodbye because we were close. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write you a story, and I'll email it to your dad. He'll read it to you. And a couple of months later, I thought, I haven't written the story yet. I better get cracking here. So the idea came to me of a boy living in complete isolation from the world, deep in the forest, with his weird grandparents, and he had golden eyes. That's all I knew. So I sat down and wrote chapter 1. And by the end of the first chapter, the basic thing was set up. And it just went from there. And I thought it would be a story or a book, one book, but now it's 6 books.
It's grown.
And there will be a book 7 eventually.
And you are self-published on Amazon, right?
I'm self-published, yeah. because I like to keep control of it. I wanted Sam's picture on the cover. Now that I'm wearing the Lyric Chronicles, which is inspired by Sam's sister Lucy, I want her picture on the cover. So I like doing that. And when there were movie producers were interested, part of the issues we had was haggling because I wanted some control over it.
Yeah, I bet.
And so if that had to end the deal, that had to end the deal because I didn't care.
Yeah. So your writing is kind of therapy. It's been pretty successful. This stuff just kind of flows out of you.
I love doing it. And I do consider it an extension of my readings. I do. It's not two separate things at all.
I want to hear a little bit about how you have developed your skill a little bit. Like, did you have a mentor helping you? I mean, this seems like it would be very lonely at times too, kind of sitting on this thing that you can't explain, where people it must want something from you when they find out. But do you have anybody who's saying, hey, Marjorie, this is kind of how I've dealt with it? You know, is there anybody guiding you at this point?
No. I've never really had anyone guiding me, and I never really thought I needed anyone guiding me because I feel guided.
Right.
But when I was in Japan, I want to say at the parapsychology research place, the head of the place was Dr. Motoyama, who's passed away by now. He was a Shinto priest. He had a lot of abilities himself.
Okay.
So he did help me, teaching me certain meditations and that kind of thing. But I never felt, when I started doing readings, I didn't think, where do I go? What do I do? I just thought, I'm going to do readings.
Yeah.
So
this is what I should do.
Yeah. And so it can be isolating, though. I remember I was flying back from Europe one time, and there was a guy sitting next to me, and we were chit-chatting very pleasantly for an hour or two. He was telling about his work in computer science over in London or something. And then eventually he said, what do you do? I said this deliberately because I could have said, oh, I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. Instead, I said, I'm a psychic. He didn't say another word to me the entire flight.
He's like, you know too much already.
Yeah. No, it's like, no, not that. It's just, oh, she's crazy, or
yeah.
oh, she's, oh, they're frauds or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there's people have strong opinions about this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm going on another flight. There were two young British guys who just graduated law school, and I was walking around the plane, and they were too. So we were chatting in the back, and it came out that I was a psychic. They were fascinated. They had a million questions. But this other guy cut me dead. And then I've had people accuse me of working in league with Satan.
Yes, I can see that too.
And I'm a fraud. I work with Satan. There was a guy coming around the Sunday market threatening me. You know, it was awful. And market security had to come and finally deal with them. So I get all kinds of reactions.
How do you learn how to turn it off and on? I mean, I do wonder about that because it is, I mean, it would seem like it gets a little bit invasive into your life. So how do you develop that particular ability?
It took really about 10 years. It was not an easy process, but it was in part studying when Dr. Motoyama taught me these various meditations to do, and also how to protect myself. I do also sometimes do paranormal investigations. And before that, I just do a 5-minute meditation of a visualization of like a golden light protecting me, a shield kind of thing. And I can do that. I do meditation before readings, but it was just a process of learning how, it's hard to describe, but to turn it off when I wasn't doing a reading or didn't want it on.
Yeah.
And so that was life-changing because at times it was just too overwhelming. Like when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, because so many people have so many intense things happen in their life. Knowing about that would really be a lot.
Yeah, and it's none of my business. And I don't want to know about it. And
Yeah.
I don't want their privacy to be invaded. So once in a while I might just pick up something just inadvertently because I can't help it. But 95% of the time it's fine.
So I want to ask you about something because I have had 2 separate, very powerful experiences with you, one with my grandfather and then one with my father who's passed. I want to hear how this ability has kind of shaped your view about death and what it means to cross over.
Well, as I said, one of my earliest memories from this life was the Holocaust life, which was horrible. Eventually, I made peace with that. But I had another incredible incident in Egypt when I was there, and remembering a past life there. And that takes a whole other podcast to talk about. It's so complicated. But so I had, after that especially, I knew reincarnation was a fact. Nothing can convince me it's not. So that takes a lot of fear out of death. Plus, when I'm doing the readings and I connect with someone who's passed away, they are alive. You know, their spirit is alive. This isn't some scary ghost or something. Their personality is there. Their memories, like your grandfather on the piano, you know, he knows what's going on.
Yeah, he knew exactly what was happening.
And I don't know. He's giving me the information. But when I connect with these personalities from the other side, one of the great pleasures I have is connecting with their personality.
Yeah.
And if they were a great person, they had a great sense of humor, that very positive. Oh, it's so much fun to connect with that. Sometimes people are very morose, but they are, to me, there's no heaven and hell or that kind of thing.
Right.
It's like a parallel universe. They're right here, but it's like a different dimension.
I mean, this is just all so fascinating and it's so personal. So thank you for opening up so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
About it. Is there anything else you want people to know?
Oh, that's a hard question.
I know.
I think that the world is more than we know. And to not try to make things narrow or stifled to fit a preconceived belief. Because whatever you believe, fine, but just know there's more to it than that.
Right.
And that goes for people who are very strict in a certain religious following, or people who are complete atheists and think there's nothing. They both think they know the answer.
Right.
There's something and this is exactly what it is. Or there's nothing. I know the truth about everything. That's absurd to me. No one knows. It's impossible to know. It's so vast. It's so amazing. And so I think there's that saying, the beginning of all wisdom are the words, I don't know. And I think we should keep humble and remember that. And people often ask me, very pointed questions about spiritual matters. And sometimes I'll have some beliefs in it, but I'll often say, I don't know. I'm a psychic medium, true, but I don't pretend to know all the secrets of the universe.
Yeah.
At all. I know what I know. I know what I've been shown. I know what I'm able to do. But there's so much more to everything than that.
Do you think that we all have a little bit of this ability in us?
I used to think so. I used to think everyone has psychic ability, but they're probably not using it or whatever. Now I don't think so, because I've definitely met people with none. But I think it's like
Can you tune into that too?
No, yeah, because it's like every other gift. Like, does everyone have mathematical ability or athletic ability or, anything else? No, some people do, some people don't. And some people have it to a lesser degree than others.
Right.
Like, there's some math geniuses in my family, and that certainly skipped me over.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Yeah, and I don't have musical ability or whatever. So that's the thing, is that this whole psychic thing is taken as a woo, hocus pocus kind of thing. But it's just a gift like any other gift. It might be less understood than, but if
I think it's much less understood.
If someone's a musical genius, let's say, we can enjoy their creation, but where does it come from? We don't know exactly.
No, and I think also with something like that, or with athletic ability, you can see it.
Right.
And with what you have, you can't see it. And it's such a, for me,
you can see it in the sense of like, I told you things and you say, oh yes, this really resonates
and also like, I am an open recipient to that information, right? Like I believe in you. Like I want to say it's a leap of faith, but for me, it's not. Like, it was very clear to me, because you knew something about me that I had never told anyone either. Like, not even my husband. You were the first person who said, I think you need to start writing kids' books. And I had worked on a little poem. And I had not told one soul that I did that. And you knew.
I just want to correct you a little bit there because you said I knew. I don't know. I am given the information.
Yeah.
From another source.
Well, you provided information.
Right. I provided it. I passed it along to you. Let's put it that way.
And so I believe it to be real, but there are other people who I think would receive information that no one else knew and think, well, somehow she Googled that. I mean,
yeah, you happen to walk down the street and at the Ballard Market and somehow I knew who you were. And so I could Google you. It's impossible.
I felt shoved. Even my husband and I were talking about that first experience, and he was like, that like something happened to you because it was so weird how you just like were like, give me $20.
Well, it's interesting because a number of people who come to me at the Sunday market say the same thing. They just feel compelled to come over.
It was a compelling,
and
it was
often
a compelling
something
thing.
very, helpful to them does come out in the reading. So it's interesting how they're drawn. So that's their own inner self pushing them.
I have been asking people if they have like what questions they would ask a psychic. And the one thing that I've gotten a couple of times is ask her about deja vu. What does deja vu mean?
Again, I don't necessarily know, but I think if you go to a place you've never been to and feel like you've seen it already, that could be a past life coming back.
Because I have deja vu a lot.
So just for little things?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I don't know exactly, but I think time is a lot more fluid than we think. And the idea of past, present, and future is kind of arbitrary. And so maybe they exist simultaneously. I don't know. So you might have had a sense, oh, I did this before because you did do it before.
I mean, that's really existential.
I'm not the first person to think this.
No, I know.
But, and that's not just a philosophical thought. It's scientific too, I think. So for example, when you look out at the stars and you see the stars shining, you're looking into the past. Right. Millions of years, if not billions, maybe millions, because it takes all that time for the light to reach Earth. So we're looking at it saying that star shining brightly, but maybe that star died, millennia ago, but not just now.
Just
the light's
now the
still
light
coming.
Is getting.
So when you think about it, it's so mind-boggling. That's why I say reality is a lot more fluid than we know. And I think Einstein said something like, any conclusion arrived at by purely logical means is false.
Well, this is an amazing story. I mean, you're an amazing woman, Marjorie. I just learned so much about you. I had no idea about your whole experience in Japan. I mean, you are a wise guide.
Oh, there'd be many who would disagree, especially in my family, probably. But anyway.
Yeah. So how has this path kind of impacted your relationship with your family?
I think none of them really can deal with it in the sense of, okay, we love her, but she's a little crazy. I think it's that kind of thing. Because, I've been told by a certain family, oh, you're crazy. It's crazy. This is impossible. But everyone's entitled to their own reality. That's okay. I can't convince them. I can't change it. Sometimes it's frustrating because, it's who I am. And
is there a piece of you too that's like, well, we'll be seeing each other in life after life after life after life. So get used to it.
Yeah, but they don't believe that, so it doesn't matter to them. But they are who they are, and I am who I am. And we're probably together for a reason, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to learn from each other in certain ways. I told my younger brother, Glenn, who's really not on board with any of this, I joke with him sometimes that one of the reasons you were born into this life was to help teach me tolerance. Because I have to put up with him, learn to put up with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't just have to put up with me.
Right.
I have to learn to put up who's so polar opposite. It's a difficult relationship, but we love each other.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure.
As so many families. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't have a complicated relationship with their family.
And my mother, who was really mentally unstable, she had psychic abilities. And she didn't like to deal with them. Once in a while she did, and it was very interesting. We had a very interesting connection despite all the other problems. My family's Jewish, and one branch of the family were Hasids, which are Jews who try to connect with like the higher power through various rituals and joy and all of that. And the other was, I can't think of the name now, who are very interested in the secret codes and secret rituals of mysticism.
Right.
So both branches going way back generations were sort of interested in this or in the spiritual energies. So maybe I come by it naturally.
Yeah.
But I know my mother had some ability. My oldest sister, Barbara, had a few incidents that clearly show she had abilities. But, she doesn't, at times she would just dismiss it or say.
Do you view it as a skill that you kind of have to sharpen?
I think with any talent, you can sharpen it. So some people would ask me, they say they want to do readings. How do they learn to do readings? I said, do readings. That's how you learn to do it. And that's one piece of advice for people who are listening to this, if they want to go to a psychic, is let the psychic do the reading. In other words, you don't tell them anything.
Right.
Don't give them any information and see what they come up with. Then if you see that tuned in, okay, you can
Have you met any complete frauds?
I haven't met any that I know of, but I heard of them. I mean, there was a article in the paper just the other day or on the online where a so-called palm reader had defrauded someone out of $71,000
Wow.
by saying her daughter was possessed by a demon and somehow this palm reader was going to help the situation. So she was a complete fraud, but of course the client was really foolish.
Right.
If someone says you have to pay me
street.
thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to do this, to remove a curse, don't do it. I mean, I had someone once call me, a complete stranger called me and said that she had been on with a phone psychic who is out of Miami or something. And this phone psychic told her, you have a curse on you. The only way the curse can be lifted is send me all your cash.
Oh.
I will put a blessing on it and send it back to you.
Oh, that's nice.
And this poor woman did. So she called me and said, am I going to get my money back? I said, no, you don't need a psychic to tell you that.
She could have called me. I probably would have told her.
And she tried to call this Miami psychic and the number was disconnected.
Shocking.
But I mean, this woman has to take responsibility for being so foolish as to do that. But there are many frauds out there and it makes me furious. So if you want to go to a psychic, let the psychic do the reading. If they tell you have a curse or they can put a spell on someone for hundreds or thousands of dollars, just get up and walk out.
No.
Yeah, one client came and had a reading and he really liked it. And at the end he said, you know what? You seem so normal.
You do.
So I said, well, thanks. Why do you say that? And he said, well, I went to some storefront psychic and she told me after 5 minutes, you have a lot of negative karma. But fortunately, I have a negative karma disruptor.
Oh.
I can sell you for $1,500. So luckily he got up and walked out. But if she tries it on everyone who comes in, she'll get lucky every so often and do pretty well. But that's the thing.
That's a pretty reasonable price to reverse your negative karma.
Not bad. But maybe she was having a bargain sale.
Yeah, exactly.
Pre-Christmas sale or something.
Yeah, pre-Christmas, make sure Santa comes.
But he did the right thing. He got up and left.
Yeah.
So everyone needs, as I say, to use your judgment when dealing with psychics. Don't give them a lot of information about yourself. Let's see what they say. You'll know quick enough if they seem really genuine.
That was immediately why I trusted you, honestly, because I sat down and you said, do not tell me one thing about yourself.
Right. I never want
just talk
anyone
about
to
the
say
weather
anything.
and let me tune into you. And then, I had a pretty powerful experience.
Yeah. I always say that. Don't tell me, talk about the weather, what you had for breakfast. And sometimes I'll just slip in, oh, I'm a teacher who just came from New Jersey. I said, oh, don't tell me.
Don't tell me that.
I don't want to know. Because then if I psychically pick up they're a teacher from New Jersey, I can't say it because they told me.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating. So that's another reason I don't want to know.
Well, for anybody that wants to find Marjorie, you still are at the Ballard Farmers Market on Sundays.
I'm
correct?
there on Sundays if it's not raining. I don't have shelter. So I'm set up in front of the Ballard Inn. But I do most of my readings at my home in Ballard. And also I do phone readings for people all over.
Right. And I will put your email,
Contact information.
and all your contact information in my show notes and on my website at rightinfrontofmyface.net. So anybody that feels compelled to call, do it.
Please do. I'd love to do it. And also, if anyone is interested in reading about this sort of thing, you can check out my fantasy adventure series,
Yeah,
The Boy
absolutely.
with Golden
And
Eyes.
The Boy with the Golden Eyes, we'll put that up with...
And it's available
we'll just
on
put up a
Amazon
link.
and so on.
I'll put on the Amazon link for it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
It is so wonderful to chat with you in such an earnest, honest way. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you so much for asking me.
Willing to talk to me, Marjorie. This is wonderful.
Oh,
it really
it's my pleasure.
You are somebody who's right in front of my face with an incredible gift and an incredibly articulate way of talking about it. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And everybody,
anytime,
get in touch with her. She's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've learned, do not pay $1,500 to reverse your karma. And probably you don't have a hex on you, and probably you shouldn't pay to have the hex taken off you or any of your family members. Huge thank you again to Marjorie for sharing your unique life experience with a new audience. It's so appreciated. Once again, find me, please, on Instagram at Right in Front of My Face. I am on Twitter at In Front of My Face. Show notes, links to all of Marjorie's information, links to buy her books, which I've started to read, and it actually is a fantastic read. I will put all of that up on my website. Again, I would love show ideas. I am constantly inspired by people that I'm seeing on social media. We all know people who have incredible stories. So if you know anyone who is right in front of your face that might want to share, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'm also on email. My email address is infrontofmyface@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. And as I sign off, usually I will say, take some time during the next couple weeks to dig a little deeper, ask some more meaningful questions to the people all around you, because you truly do not know what is right there in front of your face.